So my last video I made created quite a bit of a stir, so I'm gonna address that in this video. Is Nikon dying? Stay tuned. So if you don't know who I am yet, my name is Peter, and you probably found my videos through whether or not you should use this guy right here, which is the Nikon 35, which I highly recommend for any of you beginner shooters. But we're not here to talk about that. Links in the description for this video. But what I am going to talk about is this instead, Nikon, and whether or not the company itself is dying, and a lot of hearsay and rumors, and a lot of clickbait kind of titles and headlines that people use, including myself. I am guilty. So let's dive right into it and talk about it. So recently in the media, or people's own blogs specifically, is that people have been stating, and certain bigger YouTube channels have been saying, that Nikon cameras are a dying breed. Company sales have been down, employees have been cut, and people are wondering, is this specifically related to only Nikon, or is this a scare tactic to make other people jump and bandwagon to other companies like Canon and Sony? Well, truth be told is DSLRs and just overall the general enthusiasts in terms of camera geeks and hobbyists are dying in general. Not a lot of people are buying cameras like they used to. Why? It's because of their smartphones. Smartphones are killing the game, and if you know me, I'm all about not having, like, literally having a $0 budget and making something awesome, and that is the basis of this channel. So ever since the technology boom, smartphones have been destroying the camera market, and there isn't much of a general person that's going to go out and buy that there isn't a person that's going to go out and buy $1,000 camera just for fun. Where back in the day, people used to buy DSLRs so they can capture family moments, and that made a lot of the sales. But now with your phone, shooting in 4K, filming in 4K with just a smartphone, that is essentially what is killing the camera market. And what's happening is cameras overall, Canon, Sony, and Nikon being the top three, their sales are down because of that. So on the topic of whether or not Nikon is dying, the answer is yes, Nikon is dying, and company profits are slowly declining. But a big peach emoji is that cameras overall are losing profits, and the only company to have a little bit of a margin and have some high profits, 2% in the camera market, is Sony. And camera companies in general like Canon, Fujifilms, Olympic have been slowly seeing their sales decrease over time because of technology and this advancement of something called a smartphone. Now, this guy can do your 4Ks, your filming, and since everyone has a phone now, they essentially have a DSLR equivalent. Not really, but they have something that they can use to film and take photos with, all within their pocket, and not needing to go out and having to buy a DSLR. Because when I was younger, I remember everyone having a DSLR to take family photos and family gatherings and film just family moments. But now with your phone, that is slowly starting to take over the market, and that's what's happening, is that we're in this weird technology kind of gap where cameras now are becoming more and more exclusive to those who want to actually get into film and video, and the so-called journalist person doesn't really care about interchangeable lenses and this and that, and they rather just use their smartphone. So to reinstate this, yes, there has been headlines, yes, I'm guilty of using it, but the reality is that cameras overall, except for Sony with a little bit of a edge in the competition, has made profit, but overall DSLRs in general and mirrorless cameras have been on the decline. But as you see, if a company was actually completely dead and dying, would Nikon actually reinvest its profit and any profit that it may or may not have into mirrorless technology? Like, even though Nikon was late to the game, they still have invested their own technology into the Z6 and the Z50s, or the Z50s, depending where you are in the world. And Nikon, for the first time, first line of first generation mirrorless cameras, it is a pretty solid camera. Comparing to its competitors like the Sony, I was watching another fellow content creator talked about, do you remember Sony's first generation mirrorless cameras? They were garbage, and it took them years and generations after generations, whether it's their alpha cameras or their A7. There's so many models. Why? Because they didn't get it right the first time. And Nikon, they did pretty well seeing their competitors and seeing what to do and what not to do. As even in the Sony Alpha line, you got the 6600, the 6400, and the 6500, and the 63, all within a time span of 2 to 5 years. That is pretty frustrating for your high-end consumer. Whereas for your Nikon camera, you got your Z6 and your Z50s that come out, which, yes, did take some time for Nikon, but they are reinvesting. And Nikon itself is not just a camera company, it is an imaging processing technology, and there's other investors into Nikon as a whole. And if you look into their statistics and actual investor reports, it's not that bad, and it's a lot of hearsay and this and that. And as a company with over, let's say, I think it's $1 billion in terms of revenue, I think they're doing pretty well investing, and it's just going to take time for the whole camera market to readjust and figure out where is the revenue coming from now that there's this technology gap and people are not needing to buy DSLRs like they used to, and film cameras and all that stuff. And that's just gonna be on a little dip. But with cameras and technology, just like everything, just like the market, it's gonna go back up. Whether or not they're gonna cater towards general enthusiasts or a different market, who knows? But I just wanna say that, yes, Nikon is dying, and I'm sorry that it offended anyone out there, but if you watch my channel, I'm not about having camera exclusivity. And how I started off is I had literally $0 to my name, and we're watching all these camera channels, and I was like, how does this person have $5,000 to $6,000 to $8,000 to invest in this whole gear, setup, and equipment? But I was working a part-time job at the time as a cook, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So what ended up happening was I saved a little bit of money, and I was like, hey, there's this Nikon camera. There isn't a lot of people using this for video, but you know what? It's all the money I have. And I invested in my first camera, which I'm using right now, my Nikon D5200, and I was determined to get into a career in video, even though I had a Nikon camera and not the best budget. And that's where all my tutorials came in, because there wasn't really a channel or someone that I could look up to when it comes down to Nikon cameras and video. And at the end of the day, I'm not about camera exclusivity. Where I come from is a place of where you can create something, even if it's considered nothing. And this is going to be my last video for 2019, going into 2020. And moving forward, I want to be talking and doing things that that inspire me, and not so much more of clickbait titles and XYZ, and do things like talk about stories and pacing and doing just even short creative projects, because the whole point of creating is not to point fingers at people and be like, you should say this, you should do this, you can do this. But at the end of the day, as a creative, I think if you're a true creative, it's all about expressing yourself freely. And yes, it comes with constructive feedback and all that stuff, but being a creative is freedom, and true freedom is to be able to push your own limits, push your own creative boundaries, and make things that talk to your soul. And for me, that means pushing my limits and doing more things outside of the box. And I'm going to be experimenting with that in 2020. And if you just stumbled across this channel, make sure I'm in focus. For all you Nikon users, you have pressed that button. And now it should be face detection on. And I did make for this Christmas, because I always get comments like, hey, what's the best lens for my Nikon D53, 300, my D3000, 7000 model? How do I use it? What's the best settings? How do I go from manual to automatic or automatic to manual? That's what I meant. Or what are the best lighting systems and camera settings that I'm using right now that I'm actually getting this clear of an image on a Nikon camera that was released almost 10 years ago? I made an exclusive course that I literally walk you by step. And for you people that are watching right now, this is a Broke Visionary collective one-time special offer for a limited time price. Link is in the description to check that exclusive course out. And that's going to be my last video on, or resource on, how I can help you with all the Nikon settings, which lenses, what do I recommend, and how I get my own cinematic shots, and how I was able to make over $10,000 in using just a simple Nikon camera that was released 10 years ago. All that is in the links below, check that out. But at the end of the day, my name is Peter, and all I care about is making cool content and being creative and helping you create something awesome. Doesn't matter what camera you have. And I'll see you in the next year. See ya.